Okay, everybody, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. So, is everyone hearing me? Just nod. Great. Okay, good. The sound's coming through okay. I have a new microphone, so hopefully it sounds okay. So welcome. It's good to see everybody. And glad to see some of you are back from last week. And so this is the second part of our series. This is the Davening Workshop, where we are focusing on Shabbat Shacharit. It's for people who would like to learn to lead Shabbat Shacharit as a Baal Tefillah, Balat Tefillah, prayer leader. It's also for people who are not interested in learning to lead, but are just interested in learning about prayers, about davening in general. And I know that a number of you are in that category, and that's great too. So welcome to all of you. And thank you to those who wrote me this week. It was great to hear about your backgrounds and what you're interested in. So I really appreciate that, and I'm glad that you're here. So just quickly, I kind of want to review a little bit about what we talked about last week, and then we're going to move into some. We're gonna review what we did last week. We're gonna give some opportunities for anyone who would like to share what they've been working on. I think there are a few of you, and then we'll move into some new territory. So we just, as a reminder too, just logistically, we're going to stay on mute through the class, but you can hit your space bar at any time to give a quick response, and there will be a lot of things like that. So I welcome you to do that. I'd love to hear people chiming in. So just as a review, we talked about last week, how many times a day do we pray? Anyone can shout that one out. Or I can see some fingers. Okay, 3. And on Shabbat, there's an extra one, so it's 4, right? And then we talked about, thank you, Phyllis. And then we talked about sort of a broad outline for Shabbat morning. So we start with the preliminary service, which is Pazukei de Zimra, and Birchot HaShachar and Pazukei de Zimra. Then we move to Shacharit, then to Torah service and Musaf. So those are really the 4 elements: Prelim, Shacharit, Torah service, and Musaf. And this class is focusing on Shacharit. We can do other classes for the other parts of the service, but we're really focusing on that piece for Shacharit. And we talked about, I'll just share my screen briefly here. We talked about, here we go. This is just an outline for Shacharit. At least if you were leading Shacharit, this is what you would be responsible for. So you would start at Shochenad, which is what we spent most of the class last week talking about, and through the rest of this. Chatzi Kaddish, Baruch Hu, 2 blessings before the Shema, then the Shema and Ve'ahavta, 1 blessing after the Shema, the Amidah, and Kaddish Shalem. So this is the outline for Shabbat Shacharit. And we also talked about how technically Shochenad is still part of Pazukei de Zimra. We're actually leading the service just before the actual Shacharit begins. Officially, Shacharit begins at Baruch Hu, but we begin at Shochenad because we don't want to have a break between Pazukei de Zimra and Shacharit. There's reasons for this. We talked about that last week. And so we start at Shochenad and we move seamlessly into the Baruch Hu and into Shacharit. So we spent most of our time last week talking about Shochenad. Today we're going to kind of review that section, talk briefly about the Kaddish and the Baruch Hu, and we're going to move into this first blessing before the Shema, which is the Yotzer or section, which is really focusing on light. I'm just going to stop the share for a minute. So that's the outline of Shacharit. We listened to some examples last week of the Nusach of Shacharit, the Nusach of Shochenad. We talked about how musically there's really 3 sections. There's the Shochenad section, which is where we are right now, and there's the sound for that section, and that's what we've been talking about so far. When we get past El Adon, which we'll do next week, we're going to move into the second musical section, which is a different sound, and then when we get to the Amidah, that's another sound. So those are really the 3 kind of musical sections that we're talking about, and right now we're in the Shochenad section. And so we talked about that Nusach, and I'm just going to briefly go back here for just 1 second and review briefly what we talked about. Did everyone get this? Is an outline that I sent. Don't it's kind of small on your screen here, but I sent it as a file attached to the people who attended last week. I can send it out again. This is just a summary. You can see when you get the attachment, you can see it more up close. But this is a summary of what we do in Shacharit at CBI, what's typically included, and so if you're a leader, what you would be responsible for. We talked about, again, last week, this is just review, the Shochen Ad prayers. We looked at each of those paragraphs, the Shochen Ad paragraph, which was really focusing on uplift and praise, Uvmakalot, which was the next paragraph, which was sort of increasing the praise to the Kahal and to the generations. And then the Yishtabach paragraph, which was the summary bracha, the summary blessing of all of Pesukei de Zimra. And it sort of encompassed all of it and brought it all together in a conclusion. So that's just a review of what we talked about last week. We talked about this. These were some techniques that we talked about for the Shochen Ad Nusach, in addition to the examples that we played last week, and I also sent out to the participants last week, and I can send them again if there's anyone new. We talked about these moves that are related to the Shochen Ad Nusach. There was 5 moves. The first one's really the most important one, and I'm just going to review it quickly, and it sounds like this. Shochen Ad Marom Vekadosh Shemo, like that. And we were using the lyrics of the Star Spangled Banner to practice this nigun. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? So that was the first move. These are some examples in Hebrew that we talked about last week. I'm gonna get out of this for just a minute. Before we go, I don't want to go through all that again. We talked about it last week, and so what I'd like to do right now is see if there is anyone who has been working on this section, even if it's just a little bit, who would like to share anything that they've been working on. Sort of open it up to hear from people, and then we can review some more and move into some new territory. Anyone feeling brave? I see Linda Levine. Do you want to share, Linda? Go ahead and unmute yourself, or I can unmute you here. Okay, let's hear from you.
So I was doing the Joey Weisenberg. Weisenberg, thank you. Okay. Shochein, a little bit of his. I was putting in the Shochein Ad, like you had said, really, it should be said. Shochein Ad, Maharom V'Kadosh Shemo. Shochein Ad, Maharom V'Kadosh Shemo. B'fi Yesharim, Titalal, Titalal. Uvdivrei tzadikim, tiparach, tiparach, shochein ad, marom v'kadosh shemo, shochein ad, marom v'kadosh shemo. I don't know if you want me to keep going.
Very pretty, very pretty. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, I had also sent out a link to Joey Weisenberg's nigun, his Shochen Ad song, and although that's not typical nusach, it is a beautiful song that could be used depending on the type of service that you're in and the type of congregation that you're with. So for like a standard service at our congregation, at Congregation B'nai Israel, we might use that in like at Hallelu, or maybe even Yismachu, a service where we use musical instruments and we are a little more creative. We might use that for Shochen Ad. So it's very pretty, and I love that one a lot. Anyone else have anything to share in this section? Shira?
Okay. So I tried doing the 2 musical things that the 2 out of the 3. I couldn't figure out the major, how to convert it to major, but I tried the silsulim and the root. Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo, v'anenu tzadikim v'Adonai, nisharim nava tehila. בפי ישרים תתרומם, ובשפתי צדיקים תתברך, ובקרב קדושים תתעלה.
Beautiful. That was really nice. What I like that you did there is that you took pieces of the nusach and you made them your own. And one of my favorite sayings comes from my teacher, Cantor Nate Lamb. If it sounds like nusach, it is. And that's exactly what you just did. You took the pieces and you utilized them in a way that was appropriate for the words and made it your own. So nice job. I like it. Keep doing that.
Thanks.
Anyone else want to give it a try? Nathaniel, hi.
Hi. All right, here we go. Shochen ad maharom vekadosh shemo vekatuv raninu tzadikim Adonai l'sharim navatahilah b'fi yesharim titalal uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש.
Beautiful. Keep
ובמקהלות
going.
רבבות עמך בית ישראל.
Beautiful.
Stop there?
Yeah, that was great. Nice job.
Okay.
Very
you.
good. So yeah, that was really nice. I loved what you did. You used some of the moves that we talked about and some variations on those moves. All of them were appropriate. All of them are appropriate. So it sounded really nice. It was definitely in the mode, in the nusach. And for everyone listening, what you can hear between what Shira just did and what Nathaniel just did and some of the things that we've talked about, they're both the nusach. They both sound similar, but they're different. And it's like we talked about making challah. It's Shira makes her challah this way, Nathaniel makes his this way. It's both challah. It's both flour and oil and eggs and sugar, but they're their own. And that's what's really special about davening. And so nicely done. So anyone else like to get to share? Am I missing anyone? Well, thank you, Shira and Nathaniel and Linda, for being brave and for sharing. And we'll keep those channels open if anyone feels like they want to share, in this session or next week or anytime. Please do this. This is a good forum to try things out. And so, what I'm going to do. So, before we move into some new territory. Just to talk a little bit more to kind of wrap up the Shochen Ad Nusach that we talked about. I sent out I sent out some recordings that I made a while back. I sent out some recordings from Rabbi Lookstein. I really like his, from Cantor Kowarski, and from Rabbi Aviva Richman. Those are all good examples. You could take any of those and copy them exactly. You could take them and combine them. You could use the 5 moves that we talked about last week and come up sort of with your own, which is sort of what Shira did. And Nathaniel sort of also blended some things. So all of those are appropriate ways to use nusach. So any questions about this section before we kind of move on, about Shochen Ad, about these prayers, about the nusach, before we move on a little further into Shacharit?
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo. Then the recording I learned from it skips to B'fi Yesharim.
Oh, that's
so
a good
actually,
point.
when I get into that next sentence, I was kind of freestyling there for a second because I'm not used to singing it.
Oh, you did great. You did great.
Thanks.
So, yeah, really all you need to do, and it will vary a little bit depending on which Siddur you're looking at. I have the Lev Shalem right here, which is the red one that we use at CBI. I also have the old Sim Shalom, which we used to use at CBI. In that book, it's page 336. In Lev Shalem, it's page 147. Depending on the Siddur that you're using, you really only need to open a paragraph, which would just be like the first line or the first few words, and then pick up at the arrows. So really, all you would actually need to do, like, what Siddur do you have with you, Nathaniel?
I have the art scroll.
The art scroll. Okay. So
Yeah.
I don't have that one in front of me right now, but so you could really, all you need to do is that first line. Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo. And then you could mumble, just reading to yourself. As the Baal Tefillah, what you're responsible for is reading every word, opening and closing the prayers appropriately to sort of keep the kahal on pace, and reading every word on behalf of them. You're sort of acting as an agent for the congregation. So yeah, you could open that first line, Shochenad, and then here in this book, it goes, the next arrow isn't till Shekain Chovat Kol Haitzarim, later down the next paragraph. So that's where you could pick up. When I lead this, I do everything on this page just because it's the opening of Shacharit and it's so pretty, but that's not necessary. So if you're able to, which you are, we just heard you do the whole first area. So if you're able to do it, I think it's nice, but it's not required. So you could certainly just do the first line and then mumble, to yourself until you get to Shekain Chovat Kol Haitzarim.
Yeah, it's a nice melody, so it's nice to sing the full passage.
Yeah, that's a great question. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Sure. Any other questions about this section, about Shochenad, about the Nusach?
Same thing on page 148.
Okay, sure. So on 148, when we turn the page, I would open the paragraph Yishtabach. So at least those first four words. Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. Just that, at least just it opens the paragraph. It lets everyone know where we are. Also, traditionally, we stand at that point, and most people are going to say those lines with you or repeat them after you. I always, when I'm leading, because people are anticipating that moment, when I turn the page, either I announce the page number or Rabbi Spitz does often, and I kind of like anticipate that people are going to do it with me. So I'll be like, Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu, because people are sort of waiting for permission to go with, and I like everyone to come with if they can. So I would open those first four words, mumble, 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 until I get to the arrow, Barachot v'hodaot me'ata ve'ad olam, Baruch atah Adonai, El melech gadol batishbachot, El ha'hodaot Adon ha'niflaot, Habocher b'shirei zimara, Melech El chei ha'olamim. That's really all you need to do. Again, it depends. If you know all the words, you're certainly welcome to say them, but it's not necessary. Really, you just need to open and close, and that's traditionally all that you would do. So lately we've been live streaming services at CBI, and it's a different experience because the people aren't in the room, and people are watching from their couches, from who knows where in their homes, and so I've been doing more in the places where I know all the words and the melodies and stuff. I am doing more just to keep that kind of connection going, because the mumbling parts, I feel like it gets lost. I can't see you, and I can't. So that's how I'm reacting to that. But I think it just depends on your situation. So to answer your question, Nathaniel, or whoever asked this for page 148, it would be opening the first four words and then going to the arrow. Anyone want to try Yishtabach? Has anyone worked on this paragraph or still working? Nathaniel, do you know this one?
I know the bracha.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Nathaniel, and then who was the second person? Go, Nathaniel first, and then Helene. Okay.
There's one new sock I use for the Shacharit on the weekday, and then this one I just continue in the same melody. So
Correct.
just
yes.
as you said, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu, Berachot ve'hodaot me'ata ve'ad olam, Baruch atah Adonai, El melech gadol batishbachot, El ha'odaot Adon ha'niflaot, Habocher b'shirei zimra, Melech El chei ha'olamim.
Very nice. Very nice. You did
Thank
good.
you.
Helene, did you have something to share too?
All right. It's hard to follow that act though.
You can do it.
Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. Oh, sorry, those are my dogs. Barachot v'hodaot me'ata v'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol v'tishbachot el ha'odaot Adon haniflaot habocher b'shirei zimra melech el ha'olamim.
Nice, nice, very good. So yes, bravo. So again, what you're hearing with each of these examples, with Shira, with Nathaniel, with Helene, they're all in the Nusach, and you're hearing these kind of same themes happening over again, but each of them is doing it differently. So that's what's wonderful about Nusach, and that's what Nusach is. Was there anything else in this section from Shochenad up to the end of Yishabach that anyone else wanted to do? Because we kind of skipped over Machalot. Linda, did you have something else?
Well, I just was curious. One of the first rabbi or cantor, the one that begins with L, he had said ale instead of ale, he'd say kale.
Oh, so yes, that's a great question. Some people do that when they're practicing, if they're making a recording or if they're just practicing and it's not an actual service, they will say kale instead of ale. They'll say Baruch atah Adoshem instead of Adonai, and things like that, or Elohim instead of Elohim, because since it's not the actual prayer service, like right now we're just practicing and we're learning, it's not the actual shacharit, of Shabbat morning. So some people will do that out of respect, like we don't want to make a bracha in vain, we don't want to say God's name in vain, and we don't. So I feel that even in our practice, there's a holiness in that and a davening happening in that even still. So I actually use the names, but there is a tradition amongst some who don't. And so I think Rabbi Lookstein is who you were probably referring to. He was saying kale and Elohim and those kind of things in his recordings.
Thank you.
But when you actually lead, you should say the actual pronunciations. Great question. All right. Anyone else want to share anything before we move on? So, okay. So what we've talked about so far is Shochenad. It's really 3 paragraphs. Shochenad, of Makalot, and Yishabach. Those are the first 3 paragraphs. We talked about them. We read them last week. And now we're up to the Chatzi Kaddish and Baruch Hu. So Chatzi Kaddish is something that we use to mark the end of a section of prayers. And in fact, actually, I just want to take a little parking lot for a moment to talk about the Kaddish in general. And some of you may already know this, but it's worth mentioning. So there's really 4 types of Kaddish that we use regularly in the services. So this is one of them. This is Chatzi Kaddish. Who knows any of the other types?
Kaddish Shalem, Mourner's
Shalem.
Kaddish.
Yes, Kaddish Shalem, Mourner's Kaddish, and there's one more that we use.
Kaddish to Rabbanan.
Yes.
When the rabbi or when a teacher
Yes.
speaks.
Thank you. Yes, Lindy, that's correct. So Chatzi Kaddish, which is where we are right now, is used to mark the end of section. So we're doing it right now because we're marking the end of, anyone knows? It's the technical end. Right. We're marking the technical end of Pazukei de Zemra. And we're about to move into the Baruch Hu, which is the technical beginning of Shacharit. But we talked about last week, why you actually start before the technical beginning of Shacharit. So that's why we're doing Chatzi Kaddish right here. And that's what Chatzi Kaddish is used for the end of a section of the davening or a section of the prayers. It's used at the end of the Torah readings as to mark the end of that section. The Kaddish Shalem, which is the full Kaddish. Who knows when we use that? It happens after a specific thing.
After the Torah service.
After Musaf.
No, after Musaf.
It happens after Musaf. It happens some other places too. It's
after Shacharit.
After Shacharit. It always follows the Amidah. So it happens after Shacharit because we just finished the Amidah. It happens after Musaf because we just finished the Amidah. And you're probably thinking, Phyllis, of it happening just before Torah service because that's the end of Shacharit. Maybe that's what you were thinking of. Because we've just finished the Amidah of Shacharit and now we're moving into Torah service. So Kaddish Shalem always comes after the Amidah. Sorry, anyone?
Can I ask you a question, Amy, though?
Yes.
So in the middle of the Torah service, like after the 6th Aliyah?
That's a Chatzi Kaddish.
It's a Chatzi Kaddish. Oh, okay.
Yeah, when the Gabbai does Yitgadal, Yitkadash, that's a Chatzi Kaddish. And so it's just marking a section that we finished. So
Got
it's right.
Okay.
So you were correct. So that's what it is. But it's the Chatzi Kaddish, and Kaddish Shalem is always going to happen after the Amidah. Mourner's Kaddish. Oh, and I want to, sorry, before I move to Mourner's Kaddish. So the Chatzi Kaddish and the Kaddish Shalem are both said by the leader. The Baal Tefillah is the one saying those, and the Kahal will answer with Amen, and they'll say the one line, Yehei Shemei Rabbah. Mourner's Kaddish is said by the mourners, and the leader will lead them in this, but the mourners will say it, and it is used as a marker for independent sections of our prayers. So like after the Psalm of the Day, typically, or something like that, is where we're going to put a mourner's Kaddish. And then the last one, which is more rare, but it's still used in our service, is the Kaddish Rabbanan. And it's used after a section of rabbinical text or Talmudic text. So there are sections of our service that have that. We sometimes don't do them out loud in our service, but that's where Kaddish Rabbanan goes. And it is also said by mourners. So and the leader would lead them in it, and the Kahal would answer Amen. So it's used as a memorial or as a mourner's Kaddish in a section of learning. So that was just a little sidebar about the Kaddish. Where we are right now in Shacharit, page 148 in the Lev Shalem, or page 338 in the Sim Shalom. That's the Chatzi Kaddish marking the end of Pesukei de Zimra. And then turn the page one more, page 149 in Lev Shalem and 340 in Sim Shalom. Now we're at the Baruch Hu, and this is the official call to prayer. And just one thing I'd like to talk about with this, it may be straightforward for everyone, but I don't want to assume that. So I just want to talk briefly about the logistics of Baruch Hu, and as a leader, what you do, and as a congregation, what you do. So we're still in the Shochenad Nusach. So there's a number of ways to do the Baruch Hu here, but I think the simplest one would just be to use that same nigun we've been using. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. So that's what the leader would do. And then the Kahal would answer, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. And then the Baal Tefillah will repeat that either exactly the same way or in a variation. I usually go, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed, just a slight variation of the Shochenad sound right there. But you could do it the exact same way as you did the other time as well. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with that, but I just wanted to go over it. So the leader would bend knees and bow on Baruch Hu, and make sure you're standing back up by Adonai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. And the Kahal also bowing on Baruch and back up on Adonai. And so that's just the logistics of the Baruch Hu. It's the official call to prayer. We only do it if there's a Minion. If for some reason you're in a position where there's not a Minion, you would not do the Baruch Hu, and you would not do the Chatzi Kaddish, or any Kaddish. But generally on Shabbos, there's a Minion. So any questions about the Baruch Hu before we move into further into the Tefillah? Okay. So immediately following the Baruch Hu, now we are in, so this section is called Shema Uvirchoteha, which is the Shema and its blessings. And there are 2 blessings before Shema and 1 blessing after. And the first blessing is a really big overview, has to do with light, and that's where we are right now. And the second blessing has to do with love. And so we're in the Yotzer Or section. Immediately following Baruch Hu, you see this bracha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer Or v'orech choshech, Oseh shalom v'oreh et hakol. So we're in this, they call it Yotzer Or because of these words right here, Yotzer Or v'orech choshech, who creates light and who forms light and creates darkness. Oseh shalom v'oreh et hakol, who brings peace and creates everything. So I want to point out, something here. So we're in this Yotzer Or section. This, if you're looking in Lev Shalem, this section starts at the top of 150 and it goes through page 153. So it's these 3 pages. This is Yotzer Or. And it's going to close on 153 with Or Chadash, Al Tzion Ta'ir V'Nizkei Cholanu Mehera Le'oro, Baruch Atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. Okay? So these 2 brachas, Yotzer Or V'Rechoshech, and then the Yotzer HaMeorot, those are 2 brackets for this section. This is the Yotzer Or section. This is the light section. And you'll see as we look more deeply into the prayers that this section is focusing on light. And light and some other things. We'll talk about it more. But one thing I wanted to point out. So I'm just going to chant a few lines of this here, and I want you to notice a word that's getting repeated. And so let me just chant. So at the end of that bracha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hakol yoducha ve'hakol yishabechucha, ve'hakol yomeru ein kadosh kadonai. Hakol yoducha hakol yoromemucha sela, yotzer hakol. Who heard a repeating word in there? I said it actually 6 times.
Hakol.
Hakol. Right.
Oh,
Hakol. And what does it mean? It means
oh,
all. It's all. So the bracha, the Yotzer or bracha, Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, who forms light and creates darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. So we're talking about light, we're talking about creation, and we're talking about Hakol, all. And let's have a volunteer read in English, starting just right after the Yotzer. So it's Hakol Yoducha, starting in English, like on the Lev Shalem, it's all thank you. Can someone do that?
Sure. So all thank you, all praise you, and all declare, none is as holy as Adonai. All will praise you forever, creator of all.
Thank you. Let's stop there for just a minute and then we'll go forward in a minute. So we're emphasizing this all and this Hakol. And it's there's a few things that are interesting to note here. Yotzer or v'rei choshech oseh shalom v'rei et hakol is a direct quote from Isaiah 45:7, except for one word. And it's really interesting. You should make note of it, Isaiah 45:7, and look it up and see the word is. But I'm going to tell you. So in Isaiah, it says oseh shalom v'rei et hara, which means the one who makes peace and creates evil or creates trouble. And this line was really troubling to the rabbis. Like, how can we praise God for creating evil or creating trouble? And so liturgically, they changed it to Hakol to say that God creates light and creates everything, which could include darkness or can include evil or can include trouble. But we're not going to focus on that. We're going to just say that God creates all, that everything is from God. It's an interesting theological thing. If you're ever looking for something to dig into liturgically or theologically, it's an interesting thing to look into, to look at that passage in Isaiah and to look at the rabbinic ideas about it and the liturgy that changed to Hakol. And then this emphasis on Hakol, all thank you, all praise you, and all declare none as holy as God. All will praise you forever, creator of all. So to think of God as that. There is something I wanted to share about that. Where did it go? Oh, right. So one of my favorite podcasters is David Sachs of the Happy Minion. He gives a drosh at the Happy Minion every week, and then he teaches on Sundays. His podcast is called, it'll come to me, Spiritual Tools for a something world. Anyways, look up David Sachs. I'm missing a word there. But anyways, he tells this story that I love, and I've heard him tell it a few times. And there's 2 fish in the sea, and they're swimming next to each other. And one of them says, do you believe in water? And the other one says, I don't know. My grandfather believed in water. And the punchline is that they're in the water, that everything around them is water. And I thought of this story when I was reading through this section of prayer, and when we're focusing on Hakol, on everything, on God is everything, God is above everything. If you want to maybe have a kavanah, if you're leading or if you're just in the kahal, doesn't matter, a kavanah for this section, and you get to that section, Hakol, even if you can't remember any of the other words or don't know what any of the other words mean, think of Hakol and think of all, and think of those fish in the sea, and think of the little fish saying, do you believe in water? And here we are in this world, in the water, we're here, and God is all, and God is with us. So just giving that to you as a little kavanah for this section. Let's keep reading in English. And as we read, if you have a siddur, if it's the same as the reader or it's different, it doesn't matter. Note to yourself, you can either mark it with a pencil or you can just note in your head some of the key words that you hear. So Phyllis, do you want to keep reading where you left off?
Sure. Each day, God, you raise the gates of the east open the windows of the sky, bring forth the sun from its place and the moon from where it sits, illuminating the entire world and all its inhabitants, whom you created with mercy. With kindness, you illumine the earth and all who dwell on it, and in your goodness, day after day. You renew creation, sovereign. You alone ruled on high from the very beginning, praised, glorified, and exalted since earliest time.
Let's stop there. So let me just hear a few answers here, words that are standing out to you, either as themes or as keywords.
Illuminate.
Yes. Other keywords. Illuminate. We're talking about light. We're talking about bodies of light.
A lot of creation.
Creation. Yes, we've definitely got creation in there.
And a lot of light in that creation. The
Yes.
sun and the moon and the open windows
Yes. Thank you.
and the gates from the east.
Right.
The sun comes up.
Yes. Yes. All of that. So we're getting references to light and illumination. We're getting references to the bodies of light, and to, there's sort of this imagery of God opening the sash of the window. I read a beautiful feminist commentary on this section that said that it was like God was pictured as what's that? And balabusta, is that what it is? As a homemaker, you know? Is that, okay? Thank you. That God is like the woman of the house, like opening the curtains in the morning, and that God's a really good, really good at keeping house. And then we live in this sort of like nurturing home of God's world, and that as we enter Shacharit after the Baruch Hu in this Yotzer or section, we're acknowledging that we learn and we experience God in nature, and we experience God in creation. So the light, the sun, the moon, the dawn, these are parts of God's creation and how we experience God. Another commentary I read, I think it's actually just here in the side of the Lev Shalem. I love this, just over on the right margin. It says, in the liturgy, the break of dawn is then imagined as a chorus of song in which we join. I love that. The thought of light being a sound that you can hear, and that you wake up and you're like, I'm joining in, I'm gonna sing alto. So I really love that. So those are just some kavanahs for this section. I'm looking at someone just mentioned in the chat here the word mercy. I see that in here, in Hebrew, rachamim, which is repeated a few times, and rachem, this is God's mercy. Also, a feminine drash on that, rachem, is the same root as rechem, which is womb. And I've heard people say before that rachamim, that God's mercy, his compassion is, God's compassion is womb love. It's like the compassion that God, that has as a mother for her child, that kind of compassion, that kind of love. So that's another repeated theme in this section. Looking here at my notes, is there anything else? We've talked about light. We've talked about creation. We've talked about Hakol, God of all. There's nothing devoid of God. That's a very Hasidic idea, that God is everywhere. Oh, okay. Yeah, I wanted to share this with you. You know what? Let's read the last little bit, and then I'll share this thing with you. So moving on to the last little bit of this section, who would like to read? Would someone else like to read? Susan? Okay.
Okay. Eternal One, starting
Yes.
there. Okay. Eternal One, in your great mercy, have compassion on us, source of our strength, our protecting fortress, our saving shield, our stronghold. None is like you, none is beside you, nothing exists without you, and none can be compared to you. None is like you, Adonai, our God, in this world. None but you will be our sovereign in the world that is coming. No one but you exists, who will redeem us and usher in the Messianic age. And none can compare to you, our deliverer, giving life to the dead.
Thank you. So what are some key words, key phrases in this section that we just read?
None.
None, right. Ein in Hebrew, ein.
I think the uniqueness of God.
Yes, thank you. I didn't see who said that, but yes, the uniqueness of God. That's exactly what I wrote down on my notes here, the uniqueness of God. So we've talked about light. So does someone have another one?
Yeah, and just similar, protecting fortress, stronghold, saving shield, similar terms.
Yes.
It reminds me of Mikamoka a little bit.
Yes, similar. Yeah, who is like you? Shira,
And-
did you have?
Well, I was just gonna say, our, like our, is also another theme here. Like, Adonu Zenu, Tsomshkinenu, Magen Yeshuenu. It's like all our.
Yes, as a collective. Right. Do you guys understand what Shira is bringing up? These descriptions of God, Sur, Mishkavenu, Magen, Yeshenu, Miskav, Ba'adenu. These are all plural possessive words. They're saying that this is ours. So she's bringing up that we're speaking as a group, as a collective. So we talked about light, Yotzer Or. This section's called Yotzer Or, the one who brings forth light or forms light. And we talked about creation, Ovorea et Hakol, the one who creates everything, the God of all. We talked about the uniqueness of God. And it reminded me of something I learned a long time ago. I learned it from two different places. I heard it once from Alec Isaacs, who was one of the CSP scholars a long time ago. And I also, I think, learned it again or heard it again from David Sachs, is the same Drashan I mentioned a minute ago. And there is a teaching that the creation story of Bereshit, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That story and the story of the 6 days and the story of the seventh day of Shabbat is a prophetic story. It's a piece of Nevi'im, a piece of prophecy that hasn't finished yet, and that we're still on the 6th day. And when we say Shamor v'Zachor for Shabbat, that we're going to remember and guard the Sabbath, we're not saying that as something that occurred a long time ago, and we're staunchly remembering it and guarding it, because it happened in the past. But we're saying it as a hope and a promise of something yet to come. Is my mic a little static? It needs to go up. Is this better? Better? Okay. So we're talking, when we're talking about the seventh day, or we're talking about Shabbat, we're talking about something that hasn't happened yet. When the story of creation happens, that says God rested, it's talking about something that hasn't actually happened yet. So when we say Shemor v'Zachor, we're saying a promise to come, and that we're still actually on the sixth day. And I bring this up in this section of the prayers because we're talking about light and we're talking about creation, and we're entering Shacharit, remembering that God renews God's creation each day. Like we read, each day, God, you raise the gates of the east, open the windows of the sky. I mean, literally, we're describing the dawn. God, raises the sun. And now, we know scientifically that the planets, that we rotate around the sun and that kind of stuff. But in the ancient days, people didn't necessarily understand that. And they thought every day God is literally raising the sun up for them. And even though we scientifically understand that it's not exactly that way, we can still think of God as renewing the creation each day for us, and that we are partners with God in this creation that's happening right now. It's not like God did this, however many, eons of years ago, and then washed his hands and walked away. That we're all being sustained this moment in this world right now in the creative energy of God, in the creative light of God. So that's a lot of kavanah. It's a lot of to think about, but that's this section. Excuse me. Nusach wise, we are still in Shochenad. All we would do here is the first bracha at the top of the page. There's actually a tradition. I say the whole bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer uvarei choshech oseh shalom uvarei atah kol. Sorry, that was really bad. Uvarei atah kol. And then I open the next paragraph. Hakol yaducha ve'akol yishabechucha ve'akol yomeru ein kadosh kadonai. And then I'll mumble. You don't even need to do that much, honestly. You could just say the bracha, and you could say Hakol yaducha to open the next paragraph. That's fine. It's just to open the paragraph until you get to the arrow. Depending on which siddur you're using, the arrow will vary. In Lev Shalem, it's at Ein Ke'erkacha ve'Ein Zulatecha. In the old Sim Shalom, it's at Ein Ke'erkacha Adonai Eloheinu. Wherever your arrow is fine. And then you would chant that. Excuse me. Let me just have a sip here.
While you're sipping, Amy, I just want everyone to know and wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it is my birthday today.
Happy birthday.
For you.
I won't say what number it is, but it's a prime number. So like 17, 19, 23. You can guess.
23.
Happy birthday.
Happy
birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So you would just chant the final bits of the arrow. So En ke'erkacha ve'en zulatecha, efes piltecha umidom melach. En ke'erkacha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh, ve'en zulatecha melkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba. Efes piltecha go'aleinu, limot ha'mashiach, ve'en dom elecha moshienu, litchiyat ha'metim. Is an example. There's many ways to do that, but you are still in the Shochen Ad, Nusach. You can listen to the recordings I sent. You can listen to Lookstein. You can listen to mine. You can listen to any of them to get ideas, or you can use the 5 moves and come up with your own version of that. Any of those are fine. Which brings us up to, so any questions about this section? Because I'm about to move on to the next page. So before we do, any final comments, questions? Okay. And so now we are up to El Adon. So it's page 151 in Lev Shalem, or in Sim Shalom. Now we are at 342. And El Adon is a piyut. It's a hymn. It's an acrostic. So if you're looking at it, it's a little harder to see depending on which siddur you have and how they lay it out. The Lev Shalem does a really nice job of laying it out and the lines here. So if you look down each line, you see Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav. It's an acrostic, and a lot of ancient poems are that way. We're going to look at the words and the meanings in just a minute, but I want to give just some kind of logistics about El Adon. So, like I said, El Adon's a piyut. It's a hymn. It's something special for Shabbat. We don't do it on weekdays. And there are many, many melodies for Eladon. We're going to talk about a few of them. But so when you get here, you should definitely sing something. This is not a place where I would use Nusach. I would use some kind of melody. There's lots of them. And you might have a favorite one that you grew up with. The only parameter that I might give, which should be pretty easy to say, because we're in the Shochen Ad section and we're in the Shochen Ad Nusach, I would pick a melody that's in minor or related to minor in some modal way. Most of the melodies for Eladon already are that, so you probably are fine. So whatever you pick, so I would stay in minor, and that's just as a general guideline for anyone who's a Baal Tefillah. If you're going to stop and sing something, with a few exceptions, and we'll talk about a few of them, but generally you want to stay in the same mode or something compatible with the mode. So even though we're not going to sing Eladon in the Nusach of Shochen Ad, we should sing something in minor that's going to feel like it goes with Shochen Ad. So I'm just kind of putting that out there. That's sort of a general guideline for any type of davening, though there are some exceptions to it. And if you ever have any questions about that, we can talk about it. I don't always stick to that rule, but it's kind of a good general rule. Another thing I want to bring up, just a logistic about this section before we kind of talk about the poem and the words. When you're singing this and when you're leading it, you will notice for some reason this piyut in general, people, I know at CBI for sure, but it seems to be in a lot of places, tend to go with an Ashkenazi pronunciation of these words. And it was something that was really hard for me when because I learned it in like Sephardic Hebrew, like Israeli Hebrew pronunciation. And when I was first leading, and I felt like I was in a different language when I was first leading it at CBI. That doesn't mean you can't do it that way, but I'm just warning you. So when you're a leader, you can brace yourself for the dissonance that you will feel. It was an argument between my husband and I for a long time, because there's many lines, like I'll give you some examples. Like Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu. In Hebrew, you would say Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu. But the next line, Yetzaram bedat, Yetzaram bedat, that's fine. Bevina uvhazkel. There's a lot of this in this piyut. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know. If you don't, we can talk more about it. But it's just something to be aware of as a leader. I've kind of struggled for a long time. I kind of held out and I kept the Sephardic pronunciations. Now you will hear me kind of go back and forth because I just have acquiesced to the kahal. It's not really right or wrong, but technically it's not the correct pronunciation to do, but it's the custom. So I think it's okay to do the other pronunciation if you want, but just be aware. So those are just some logistical things about this section. And we are going to talk a little bit about melodies. We just have a few minutes left. I think what I'll do, because it is 9:09, as your homework this week, read through Eladon and look for key themes and words. I'm just going to throw out a few things to look for. Again, we're still talking about bodies of light, luminaries. We're also getting into planets, and there's this piyut is kind of attributed to a mystical school of authorship. So they were sort of focused on planets. So those are something to look out for, and we can talk a little bit more about that. What I'd like to spend the next few minutes on are some melodies for this. So at CBI, like I said, there's many melodies. There's 4 that come to mind that I use often, so I'm just going to share those. So the Carl Bach S-I-N-I melody, I use that one a lot. So Eladon al kol ha'ma'asim baruch u'mevorach b'fi kol neshama godlo v'tuvo malei olam da'at u'tvuna sovavim oto amiga'e al chayot ha'kodesh So that's one that I use a lot. It's the tune of another one that I like to use, that Cantor Tilchin used to use also, El Adon al Kol Hamasim Baruch U'Mevorach Befikol Neshama. You can hear that pronunciation thing. God lo v'tuva ma'alei olam da'at u'tbuna sovevimoto. That's another one that you'll hear a lot. I believe all of these are on my recordings, so when I send those out again this week, you can hear them in full. If they're not, I'll try to add to them. Another one that I like, El Adon al Kol Hamasim Baruch U'Mevorach Befikol Neshama Golo V'Tuvo Malei Olam Da'at U'Tvuna Sovevimoto. So those are just 3 examples. You can hear them more fully on the recording. And finally, before we go,
Amy, can I jump in with a question?
Please, yes.
Is it at all customary, or like would it be frowned on to invent your own song for that, like to compose a song, or does it have to be?
So yeah, it's a great question. So you certainly could. The things you need to think about in doing that is that it's a place that people are expecting to sing along with you.
Oh, okay.
So if you do that, people may feel sort of left behind.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean not to do it. It just means do it in the right context. And perhaps, depending on where you are and where you're leading, maybe it's something you can record and you can send out in advance and people can hear it. So that way, when they get there, they've heard a little bit before. If you're doing it at CBI, maybe that's something to think about. But certainly for your personal use, you should compose melodies. And many cantors and prayer leaders are composing melodies all the time for this and for many sections of the prayers. It's just a matter of introducing the congregation to them and making them feel welcome. And this is definitely a singing part of the service. So that's what I would keep in mind. So I'm just going to share one last thing. We just have a couple minutes left here. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to play. We're going to get, this is what we talked about last week. This is just a review of what we've talked about tonight. The first blessing before Shema is light. We talked about Yotzer Or, and it starts at Yotzer Or and goes to Yotzer Hamarot. These are the pages in the Siddur that we use. The themes are light and creation and all the other things that we talked about. And then this is, just going to get there. It's going to just take a second. Yeah, here we go. I'm just going to play you a little clip. We use this melody at this. Let's see. Here we go.
El Adon al kol ha'ma'asim Baruch u'mevorach befi chol hanshama Godlo v'tuvo ma'alei olam
Are you talking?
Okay, sorry. Were you guys hearing that?
Yeah, it sounded.
You were. Okay, for some reason I wasn't, but if you were, then that's good. So I don't know how much of it I played, but that I really love Ehud Banai's recording of it. There's other recordings too. I don't know who wrote it. I don't think I think it's a traditional Turkish melody. I'm not sure, but I've heard other even older recordings. So it comes from somewhere in that area. But we use it at Yismachu. I really love that melody, and it's really one of my favorites. So they use it at B'nai Jeshurun. I think that's where I heard it first. Anyways, those are 4 examples of melodies. There's many, many more. And you could certainly, this is a place where you can be creative as long as you stay within that kind of minor feel, and it's something that the Kahal can either know or can catch on to and participate in. So I'm going to stop there for tonight. Next week, we'll finish up the Yotzer Or section, and we will get into the second bracha before Shema, which is the love section. And immediately following Eladon, where we are right now, the nusach changes. So next week, we're going to get into new nusach, and it gets exciting. And so look forward to that. So for this week, your challenge is to read through Eladon on your own, kind of look through the themes. We'll talk about it a little bit next week. Continue working on the Shochen Ad section, any of those paragraphs, Shochen Ad of Machalot, Yishtabach, or the Baruch Hu, or Yotzer, or any of those sections that we've gone through so far in that Shochen Ad Nusach. Anyone who'd like to share next week, it's great to hear from you and hear what you're working on. So that's all I've got for tonight. Any questions before we go?
I just want to chime in with something really short.
Sure.
Happy birthday, Amy. You are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
That was. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well done.
Amy, since this is the end of some study and Carl needs to say Kaddish, can we say Kaddish?
Yes. So, I would say Kaddish to Rabbanan, or should we say Kaddish Yatom? Which one?
Kaddish Yatom, probably.
Okay. Okay. So it is permissible. Rabbi Spitz told me that we can say Kaddish Yatom after studying, which we have studied tonight. And there are some people who would like to do that. So I'm going to just turn it's listed in many places in the Siddur.
58.
121. Or 121. Right. Let's go to 121. I'm going to go to one of those. Would Helene, or would you like to start it? Would you like to lead it?
Sure.
Okay. So let's do this. So
he needs in the Sim Shalom.
What page?
Isn't it like 202, 203? It's at the end of the Torah service back in the Citizen.
I don't know where my Sim Shalom is. Oh, here's one.
52, right?
It's actually usually listed in the table of contents because I have a completely different book, but it's
Sim Shalom 52.
Yes, right, 52. I got it. 52.
So yeah, so Carl and Helene, is there anyone else who is saying Warner's Kaddish? Lindy, okay.
Lindy.
So Helene will lead it, and the rest of us should say Amen. Even though it's a little cacophonous, if you'd like to, go ahead and unmute. It's nice to hear Amen in this, so we can give our response for the Kaddish. And we will end with this, and I thank everyone for your participation and learning.
Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Amad Ra Kirute Yamlich Malchute B'Chayachon Uvyomechon Uchaye Dechol Beit Yisrael. Agala ubizman karib imru amen.
Amen. Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam amaya.
Yikarach v'yishtabach v'yitkar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadah v'yithaled v'yithalal shemei Kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiram v'yama v'imru amen.
Amen.
Hey Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Amen.
Say Shalom Roma Kuya Aseh Shalom Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Amen. Thank you for thinking of that, Helene. And
yes, I want to make sure Carl could say Kaddish.
Thank you, Carl, for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us and for continuing to learn. And I look forward to meeting with you next week. I'll send a follow-up email with some of the things that I promised, and look forward to learning more with you next week.
Happy
birthday,
Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks so much.
Wait.
Well, be safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Some sunshine, though.
Bye-bye.